Welcome to Fun and Games Side Quests. Every episode is a different host sharing a video game they love and why they love it.
Hello again, Kaedhen here from the Radiata Stories Side Quest episode. I'm the host of the Great Game Debate podcast, a bi-weekly show where we invite guests from the games industry to play a series of lighthearted games and debate such topics as who is the absolute most jacked, yoked out, swole video game character of all time. Congrats to Zangief for winning that one. You can listen to us on YouTube or the podcatcher of your choice. I'm also a professional Dungeons & Dragons Dungeon Master. You can find me on startplaying.com if you would like me to run a campaign for you and or your friends. I'm back again today to talk about another Japanese PlayStation 2 game. So many forgotten gems on the PS2. Well, anyway, the game I've brought with me today is Onimusha: Dawn of Dreams. As a whole, the entire Onimusha series has been more or less forgotten despite Capcom porting the first game, Onimusha Warlords, to modern platforms. I'm assuming that port did not sell well, since we haven't seen ports of its sequels since its release. So, in case you're unfamiliar, Onimusha 1, 2, and 3 were in the same vein as early Resident Evil games and Devil May Cry 1. They saw the player moving from room to pre-rendered room, navigating fixed camera angles with tank controls, solving puzzles, and killing or avoiding baddies. What set Onimusha apart from Resident Evil and Devil May Cry was a demon-infested historical fantasy feudal Japanese setting, along with a samurai-inspired combat system that was more methodical and grounded than Devil May Cry. The Spencer Mansion and RPD of Resident Evil are switched out for real-world Japanese locations, like Inabayama Castle, while Chris and Jill's guns are swapped for magic swords, axes, hammers, and spears, created by the titular Oni for the express purpose of killing demons with the power of the elements. It's important for you to know what Onimusha 1, 2, and 3 were like, because the fourth entry in the series, Dawn of Dreams, is, well, not like Onimusha 1, 2, and 3. In fact, I'd go so far as to say Dawn of Dreams is the Resident Evil 4 of Onimusha. Like Resident Evil 4, Dawn of Dreams left behind the pre-rendered backgrounds, fixed camera, and tank controls of its predecessors, and marched boldly forward into the fully three-dimensional, free camera standard control future. Also, like Resident Evil 4, it moved away from its forerunner's more or less dark, serious, and grounded atmosphere in favor of a more lighthearted tone. Its characters now prone to superheroic feats of acrobatics and supernatural power that make them seem more at home in a shonen anime than a game with Onimusha in its title. Unlike Resident Evil 4, however, fans of the Onimusha series did not seem to appreciate this bold step in a new direction. Whereas Resident Evil 4 sold over 3 million copies in its first year, Dawn of Dreams sold barely more than 300,000 copies and was considered a commercial failure by Capcom. But it wasn't for lack of trying. Dawn of Dreams was a critical success, being rated the equivalent of an 8 out of 10 or higher by most reviewers at the time. Seems the world just wasn't ready for Dawn of Dreams. But that was the world of 2006. It's been 17 years since then. You probably haven't even played the Onimusha series to have any preconceived notions about what Onimusha should be, and if you did, you probably stopped caring sometime in the last 17 years. So, with that open-minded attitude, let's take a look at what Dawn of Dreams has to offer in 2023 and see if it just might be your new retro darling. Dawn of Dreams makes it clear immediately that it has much more of a focus on character action than Onimusha 1, 2, and 3. The impressively cinematic opening cutscene features the brand new protagonist and vigilante Ronin, Soki, single-handedly cutting his way through an army of Genma that has emerged from underneath Kyoto. Genma is what demons are called in Onimusha. The sudden emergence of the Genma coincides with the appearance of a strange astrological body dubbed the Omen Star. Anyway, Soki clearly isn't the normal human man caught up in supernatural events archetype like previous series protagonist Samanosuke Akechi. Over the course of the cutscene, Soki cuts down a dozen Genma in a single blow, channels the power of a mysterious red magic sword to summon a tornado, generates a Titan-sized JoJo-style stand to do battle against equally large giant Genma, and literally flies. All this to a soundtrack that evolves the traditional Japanese instruments of the series past in a marriage with synth, electric guitar, and fast-paced electronic beats. Despite his godlike powers, Soki is unable to stymie the unending horde of Genma spreading from the city and must retreat. We transition to a title card informing us that 2 years have passed. In that time, Soki has continued to harry the Genma with guerrilla tactics, earning the nickname Blue Oni of the Ash on account of his signature azure samurai armor and his penchant for burning down orchards of strange demonic trees, colloquially known as cherry trees, that the Genma have been growing across the country and transporting en masse to Kyoto. We find Soki carrying out just such an operation. As a Genma-guarded wagon transporting cherry trees travels up the main road of a small town, Soki collapses a ruined structure to cut off the wagon and ambushes its guards. Now we finally take back control of Soki and get a sense for what the combat mechanics are really like. As we lock on to our first poor Genma grunt that doesn't know what's about to hit him, we find Soki is capable of a wide variety of actions. His elaborately decorated single-edged blue broadsword, named Lamentation, features a bread-and-butter multi-hit combo that leaves enemies knocked prone on the ground. Standard action game fare, sure, but Soki has some new tricks up his sleeve too. By combining attack button inputs with directional inputs on the left analog stick, we are able to pull off special techniques with a variety of applications. Doing Dante of DMC proud, Soki can launch enemies skyward, leaving them vulnerable to juggling with follow-up attacks. He also possesses a gap-closing thrust that hits multiple times, breaks enemies' guard, and knocks down foes. For taking on multiple assailants at once, he can perform a series of slow, wide, sweeping slashes that clears the space around him. For the showman among you, a particularly flashy maneuver sees Soki briefly float backward into the air to evade attacks before crashing back down with a countering slash. Most of these techniques leave the enemy prone, allowing Soki to execute them with an impaling finisher. Soki is adept at defense as well as offense. He can block incoming attacks from any direction, but be careful, his block can be broken by powerful attacks. In addition to blocking, Soki is also capable of an omnidirectional dash useful for repositioning and dodging those pesky unblockable attacks. But there is one more technique Soki has in his arsenal, one that combines both offense and defense. This signature mechanic is almost synonymous with Onimusha and defines the series' combat system. I'm talking about Isen. Isen is essentially this game's parry mechanic. Easy to learn yet hard to master, the Isen is actually not necessary to complete the game, yet provides massive rewards to the savvy player who can grasp this tricky technique. Here's how it works. The player must either block or attack at the last possible moment before an enemy attack lands on Soki. This causes Soki to counter the attack, moving blisteringly fast as time slows and his sword seems to transform into a blinding streak of light. As the Isen ends, the enemy collapses into a pile of ash. It's incredibly satisfying every single time you do it, and it never gets old. As cool as Isen is, there is yet more depth to the technique. With correct directional input and timing, it is actually possible to chain an Isen to multiple nearby enemies. If you're skilled enough, you can walk into an enemy group, stand there coolly, like a badass waiting for one to attack, and then in mere moments execute them all with a single Isen, watching, satisfied, as they all turn to ash in an instant. That's not even the end of it. As you progress through the game, Soki can learn and upgrade new skills, unlock the power of that mysterious red magic sword he carries, and master increasingly powerful magic spells until you are capable of carpet bombing the battlefield with geysers of fire, lightning bolts, and ice spikes. And finally, to top it all off, Soki eventually awakens the ability to transform into the titular Onimusha. Think Devil Trigger from DMC. HP regeneration, faster, stronger, the works. Sounds like a lot of fun, right? Mastering Soki's arsenal should keep you busy for the whole game, right? Wrong! What if I told you there were 4 other playable characters that each have their own skill set and play style? I'll let you discover them on your own, but I have to mention my favorite, Roberto, the Japanese-Portuguese Christian missionary who uses holy prayer beads literally embedded in his arms to beat Genma to death with his bare fists. Now, not only can you play as these characters, you can bring one of them with you on every mission. As you can imagine, this just further adds to the depth of the gameplay. You can issue commands to your partner. They each have their own special partner ability to assist Soki. You can pull off extremely powerful team-up Eason and magic attacks. And of course, you can swap freely between Soki and your partner at any time if you prefer boxing heads with your bare fists to swinging around a sword, among other playstyles. As amazing as the combat system of Dawn of Dreams is, I'm sure you're wondering about everything else. The thing is, what if I told you Dawn of Dreams is like sorta kind of a Metroidvania? Bear with me. The game is broken up into missions that each feature their own level, separated into smaller maps or zones that culminate in a boss fight. It's all very Devil May Cry. However, big however here, your group of misfit demon-slaying vigilantes has a hideout that serves as a base between missions. In between missions, you are free to return to the levels of previous missions. This is where your companions come in. They each have a unique ability, like speaking to the dead, superhuman strength, or a grappling hook that allows you to reach new areas in previous levels. While completely optional, these new areas feature puzzles, treasure, gear, and combat challenges. Speaking of gear, each character has an array of acquirable armor, weapons, and accessories found as rewards through exploration or completing those optional combat challenges I mentioned. Now, you aren't running around killing all these Genma for no reason. They drop a currency called souls. That's right, a game series existed before Dark Souls that required you to absorb the souls of your enemies to use as currency. Anyway, you can use these souls to upgrade your gear. Every individual weapon can be upgraded multiple times to unlock an array of passive and active skills. These skills range from as simple as increasing maximum HP to causing the weapon to generate a damaging projectile energy wave whenever you attack with it. Yes, that last one is as fun as it sounds. On top of that, each weapon falls into one of 3 types for each character, with each type having a different standard combo attack. Soki, for example, has swift, light swords that can make up to 5 quick attacks, but he also has gigantic great swords capable of slow but powerful sweeping cleaves. In addition to souls, enemies also drop regular old money for purchasing consumables and gear at shops. They also drop regular old experience points for leveling up. Yes, you level up in this game. Leveling up grants you skill points to spend on acquiring or enhancing skills. Unsurprisingly, you spend a lot of time killing enemies in Dawn of Dreams, so it's a good thing the game has phenomenal enemy variety to keep things fresh. From your lowly undead footmen wielding conventional weapons like sword and bows, to 4-armed arachnoid ninjas, boneless exosuit piloting octopus thingies, and door-mounted tentacled laser-shooting parasites, Dawn of Dreams is constantly surprising you with weird new baddies. The variety of regular enemies is matched by that of bosses. You'll face a multitude of both Genma and Genma-possessed humans that offer duels against similar-sized opponents, as well as epic battles against gigantic insectoid freakos. There may or may not even be a mech somewhere in there. Overall, the bosses are unique and memorable battles, which I find is somewhat of a rare phenomenon these days. I won't spoil the story for you, but I will say, even though Dawn of Dreams is meant to be a soft reset for the series, there are many nods to the previous trilogy of games that culminate in one of the most amazing in-game reveals and final boss fights I can think of in gaming. What more can I say? Dawn of Dreams nails combat, exploration, and story, and is one of the most slept-on PS2 games of all time. Oh, and this game is beefy too. A casual playthrough is probably going to take like 15 to 20 hours, and a completionist run will take much longer than that. There's also New Game Plus, a 100-floor combat arena called the Dark Realm, where you can earn each character's ultimate weapon, a secret 2-player arcade fighter versus mode that lets you play as bosses, and secret Street Fighter costumes for each of the characters. Oh, and there is a cheat code that makes the game co-op and lets a second player control your companion. If any of what I have described sounds appealing to you, do yourself a favor. Dust off that PS2 and get to demon slaying. Well, that's all for me, folks. Thanks for listening, and happy gaming.
Hey there, Screen Beans. Have you heard about Screen Snark?
Rachel, this is an ad break. They aren't screen beans until they listen to the show.
Fine. Potential Screen Beans. You like movies and TV shows, right?
I mean, who doesn't? Screen Snark is a casual conversation about the movies and television shows that are shaping us as we live our everyday lives.
That's right, Matt. We have a chat with at least one incredible guest every episode, hailing from all walks. We've interviewed chefs,
Writers, costumers, musicians,
yoga teachers, comedians, burlesque dancers,
folks in the film and TV industry,
and more.
We'd be delighted for you to join us every other Monday on the Certain POV Podcast Network.
Or wherever you get your podcasts, fresh and tasty off the presses.
What? That's not...
Can I call them Screen Beans now?
Fine.
Screen Beans!
So tune in and we'll see you at the movies or on a couch somewhere.
'Cause you're all Screen Beans now.
You will be mine.
CPOV. CertainPOV.com.